I started off in a band with a friend of mine, Chris. I was at school with him when we were both 15. We were in the same mathematics class, and we started making a band together from 15. Like, we liked the same music, and we played guitar and singing and stuff. And then when we got to about maybe 18, we started to play with doing computer game stuff as well, just as something different from the the music. And then my friend, we didn't have any work, so we had no money. We didn't make any money from music. So my friend started to look for a job as a games programmer. Got a job locally, um, and then I worked for. I He was a programmer, and I did art at college. So I helped him with the art for the game he was working on for this company. And then they liked the work I did for my friend, so then they offered me a job as well. This is how I started when I was 19. It was just another thing to make. It wasn't really, we didn't really think about it either way at the time. We didn't analyze it. We were just doing things to make money, and having fun. This is it. You never know if something's going to be for your life, It's only for now. Like, even now. I mean, I don't know in 5 years if I'm still in games or not. If it carries on like it is at the moment, with it being very hard to make money, then maybe I'll do something different, But we all think this, and then just keep on going. This is how life goes. But I think the changing point came maybe when I started off doing small graphics work for another company, just doing something for a Trivial Pursuit game, a game called Flyer Fox. I did some stuff from. I did some early graphics for what became International Karate, but wasn't at the time. So I did different graphics for small games, and then Chris and I set our own company up, Sensible Software, after 1 year, and we did Parallax and Wizball. I think maybe once we did Parallax and we made our own game, and we actually went to a company, the biggest publisher in the UK at the time, called Ocean, and we got some money in advance to make this game. And then the game, we didn't make any royalties from it, but then we did our next game. I think then we kind of knew it was our job, but we didn't know how long it was going to last. But we didn't really think like this. I mean, the reality is, you don't really know what the future's going to hold. No one can predict. You just ride things as they go. I had no idea that I'd be doing a new football game now. I couldn't predict that, say, 10 years ago. So you never know what's going to happen. You just got to see what happens. I think people outside of the games industry didn't really take us very seriously. So like the biggest challenge would be like convincing your parents you're not crazy. When we were young, I'm talking about now. But really, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was really new technology, and we were being sort of like really pretty creative with what we were doing, and it was mostly a very enjoyable experience. Actually, it wasn't that much of a challenge in a negative way. It was mostly good. The challenges are very, very different now. The biggest problem now is two things. The first problem is that there are so many games on the market. In right up to, I started making games in 1985, right up to even the year 2000. You'd only have about 3 games per day coming out in any machine, and now it's like over 100. It's insane. The real problem is the amount of competition you have. That it takes us 2 or 3 years to make a game, and then people pay attention to it for a few weeks, and then so many new things. And this means a lot of money has to be spent on marketing to make a game happen. This in turn has made publishing a very risky business, because publishing wise, you have to put money behind marketing to make things happen. And another problem that's come from that is that there's not so much money to put into the development at an early stage. So right the way through from 1985 to 1998, we would always get advances whilst we're making a game. So that means that if a game takes 1.5 years to make, so it took 18 months on the Amiga, a game maybe 18 months was average. So only Cannon Fodder and Megalomania are about 18 months. So after about 3 or 4 months, we can take a demo of the game to a publishing company. They sign the game and then they give us money whilst we're finishing it. This amount of money we get whilst we're finishing it makes our business secure. You know, we can survive off the money. We can pay all of the guys working for us. We've got some money for ourselves as running the company, and we're safe. This model does not exist anymore. It's very hard to get money before the game's finished, and normally people want to see the game's finished and it's out, and if it's successful, and then they want to put more money in, which is basically marketing money to push a game to the next level, you know. This isn't the role of what a publisher does has changed. You know, publishers used to want to discover new talent or get new games. There weren't so many people doing it, so part of the skill was to back the right games, to find the right talent, and then to give us money whilst we're making the game. Basically, since digital download has happened, there's no material cost for the game. So previously, publishers were very selective about which games they would sign up, because they had to outlay maybe, I don't know, 20, 30, 50, maybe even £100,000 or euros just to physically manufacture the boxes and put them in warehouses and on lorries and take them to shops. This is all physical cost, which meant they were very selective about the titles. So for those of us making good quality titles, like we were at the top of the market, this was good for us because our titles tended to get signed, there was less competition, and we could make money. Now what's happened is there's many, because there's no cost of goods, there's no barrier. Everyone can now, you know, anyone can upload a game onto Steam or onto the App Store or whatever. It's pretty simple. So the issue we've got now is so many titles and such poor quality. You know, most of these games they're bad copies of something that was done better beforehand, or something, you know, even we're doing this with Sociable Soccer now and I don't like it, but something which is not 100% finished and it comes out. This would never have happened in the old days, you know. So I think that's changed, really, the lack of security. So every single time every day you work, you're taking a risk. It's insane, actually. You know, we've got this game Sociable Soccer out now, probably, yeah. So we've just put it out on early access almost exactly 1 month, just over 1 month ago. And we released an update about a week ago, which has effectively fixed a bunch of bugs and actually got the game to where it should have been when we first released it, because it had a few bugs when we released it. But there's a lot more to add to the game. You know, there's lots of animation to go in. The animation's very sparse. There's a lot more graphics to go in, actually, particularly on the higher end machines like PC and console. We really need to ramp the graphics up. The online function doesn't work. The main game mode where you collect cards and build a football team is not done yet. So this is the downside of early access, is that the upside is we can start to put the game out. We've been 2 years in development, so we feel good to get something out there. The community can start to see it. We can talk to the community and share with them the game and listen to their feedback on what they like and don't like, which is quite helpful if it's managed in the right way. And but the thing is, the people playing the game, it depends on their level of understanding as to how they respond to it. And there's so many different things. Like some guys, they don't like the fact that now, because the game works on these kind of pads, they don't like it. They're like, we want it to be just on one button, because that's what Sensible Soccer was, you know, which is kind of crazy because that was 25 years ago. And we're preparing a cross-platform game to go on many platforms. Or people want to get Sensible World of Soccer back with the whole trading of players. And maybe there's a few things to consider there for us. One thing is our players haven't got the proper names at the moment. We've modified the names quite a lot. And also we're developing this card trading game online, and the main game mode is actually an online game mode which doesn't exist currently in the game. So I understand why people don't understand it, but it's pretty hard to do a real season thing online, because if you're trading players, you've only got one version of Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. So it doesn't work online if everyone's got the players. It works against the AI on a computer, but not in an online game. And so that's why we're kind of not really doing that at the moment. It's something we could do later on as a special offline game mode, you know. But really, our focus is across a lot of platforms. So currently we're on PC, but also we'll be on the consoles and on mobile and on VR. We already have in the office a kind of working Xbox version, Android working, iOS working, Nintendo Switch working, Gear VR, HTC Vive, and Oculus Rift. These are all functioning platforms in our office. So it's quite bewildering at this choice of platforms, and we have to pull them together and get the online component working in a stable way. It's working at the moment, but not in a stable way that we can share with everybody. So the issue, what I'm saying is that in the old days, we would be working with a publisher and we'd already have the money coming in to get us through this next 6 months to a year that we need. Say this time next year, if everything goes well, we should have all these, you know, all the platforms should be out, all of these things will be done. In the old days, we'd have money from a publisher during all this time, so we can be very safe and stable and know everyone in the office is going to get paid. The reality now is it's not true. You know, we can only get money from if we sell shares in our companies, if we take some kind of government loans, or from the sales of the existing Steam version, which currently is okay. It's not bad, but really without the online working, we're not, you know, until that works, we're not going to get the money in. So it becomes like a more of a juggling act about what you do and how you do things. It's a more complex process. And how can we compete with the big companies? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I was talking to, because we're talking to a bunch of different publishers about working with them in different platforms in different parts of the world. And we were recently talking to a Chinese publisher about a mobile version for China. And they played the game and they kind of liked the game, but they said, but, you know, these players don't look like FIFA. And we're like, yeah, well, if you add up the budget over time, they've probably spent $400 million comfortably on FIFA, probably well beyond that, probably up to $1 billion. And we've only had 2 years with, like, I mean, there's about between 8 to 12 of us now. But, you know, obviously you can't make a game of the graphical quality of FIFA with this. And the other question was about licenses. You know, there's a kind of like an expectation in a football game that you'll have licenses. They cost a huge amount of money, like really crazy money. So when we first announced we were making Sociable Soccer, I got contacted by a Spanish company about taking La Liga rights. Do you know how much La Liga rights cost? Sometimes you can get them on very good deals. Sometimes you can work with La Liga and get them on a good deal. But this guy was like, each season, €1.5 million. Right, this is just La Liga. Bearing in mind we've got La Liga, then the Segunda Division, then we have the Premier League, the Championship, and 3 other leagues in England, 3 divisions in Germany, 2 in Italy, 2 in Holland, Portugal, Spain, Brazil, USA, China, Japan. Imagine each of these you're paying licenses. You know, we have 33 leagues. It's just insane, you know? And then we have, like, on top of that, we've got Champions League style things and World Cup style things, and you know, there's 67 tournaments in our game. So we just opted for not paying for licenses. But my point is, it's hard for people who don't understand the process to understand why. They'll just go, why aren't there licenses? You know? So I guess we have to price our product accordingly. When we've chosen like a €20 price point on the early access version on Steam for now, because the game is good quality. It's got a lot of content. I mean, there's 30,000 players, over 1,000 teams, but of course the online's not working. So I understand some people maybe want to wait until that's working. That's a valid option. The main game mode of collecting cards is also not working. The AI has recently been improved a lot and is actually much more fun to play now. In fact, we got an update coming out. This is pretty exclusive for you. No one knows this yet, but we got an update coming out within the next week or so, which is the new season. So we're waiting for the World. Has the World Cup draw happened? It's just about to happen, isn't it? I don't know if it happened or not yet today. But we're updating the World Cup groupings, and we're updating all the data to 17-18 season now. So our data's pretty old in the game at the moment. It's kind of like test data. So we're moving to like current squads now. And that update will be coming in a week or so. So we're dropping things in. And at some point, companies that we're talking to start to see the value of the game. You know, like we know we're going to fix everything, but getting people to have a leap of faith is quite hard. So yeah, the main challenge for any independent developer is how to finance game completion. That's the first challenge. And the second challenge is bringing it to market. Do you self-publish or go with someone else? And then the last challenge is, the third challenge is how do you compete with all the other products on the market? In our case, some platforms are easier than others. Mobile is quite easy. There's not many full action football games on mobile, so it's easier. Obviously, PC and console, there's more competitors. And then the fourth one is how do you retain your position in the market? Which is, and a lot of the answers to these questions is have more money. So, yeah, it's very difficult for developers, especially developers like Sensible was, where we tended to make different sorts of games. Like we made, we made Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit and Whizball, very different games. Then Micropro Soccer, then a weird 3D tennis game. Then we did Megalomania, was a god game. Then we did Sensible Soccer, was a football game. Then we did WizKid, was a crazy adventure platform game. Then we did Cannon Fodder, which was a war-based game. And we kind of jumped around from one type of game to another. This is really hard to do now because we were working as an artist. We were selling like as a creative force. And nowadays people sell on brands. So to jump from one subject matter to totally different subject matter is quite hard. I plan with Sociable Soccer, if it's successful, is to then look at other sports we can do, like, basketball, hockey, some other sports. This is our long-term plan because it makes more business sense. And these days, the business idea has to be quite tight. It's very, very much more difficult now to be successful. Game design is loads and loads and loads of decisions and ideas, from really big concepts like we want to make a game about traveling around the world and hunting for rare beetles, right? So we could do this game and then you have these beetles and you make this beetle zoo collection, whatever. But then you can look at real minutiae of game development, which is very different. So like the idea of making a football game that we're doing now is obvious, right? You've got a football game, you control a team, we put all the teams around from all the world. It's not very different from Sensible World of Soccer in that sense, Then you've got the way you control it, then you put it online, then we add card collection. But that's, FIFA have already done that with their Ultimate Team and stuff like that, so we do our version of that. We've also got a manager character. You upgrade him and he gets more skills to coach you in defense, in attack or whatever. But then there's tiny things which aren't obvious, so like noticing on the game what improves it, like a button to skip replays, which we didn't have at first. It just got forgotten about. The camera angles you do on the game between shots, which are not perfect. The default position of which icon flashes when you go to a new screen. We recently added something last night, where it helps you to, if you have a player here, and then he's attacking and this guy's defending, we were finding that we were losing this defender control. So we added an area in front of this guy under certain conditions where you retain the control of this defender. and then you need to work out what angle this area is and what distance it is, and it becomes very mathematical. Or small improvements to words you use on screens. You know, these are design is everything. It's not just the idea; it's the details. It's the description of every object in the game. It's the articulation to every member of the team, every artist, for example, what you intend them to make, what the function is within the game. So I think people always often just look at the bits of design that are interesting to them. Like if you're an engineer building a car, you don't just do like the fun bit. You do all the other bits that need to be done to work, you know. So it's a bit like that. You need to do all the components. But I think it's possible. It's possible for people to make their own games and follow their ideas. To make money from it is extremely hard. To do it as a job is a huge risk. I mean, if I was not an experienced game maker, I wouldn't choose this as a career right now, because it's becoming as risky as being a professional musician or being a professional actor. Actually, there's especially on the wanting to be a designer part, because there's so many people want to design games. You know, if you want to do a job as a programmer or an artist and you're good, part of a team, yeah, that's something which is more achievable. But you know, I've been struggling to get publishers to sign up to my new ideas just like this, and I hate it, to be honest. I absolutely detest it, because I remember the old days when people would trust you and sign your game, and now there's so much evaluation and speculation, and the more you try to be original, actually the more risk it's seen as. So no, it's just sometimes it feels like I'm just wasting my life trying to do stuff, you know, because I guess in the old days all our games used to get signed up. So a younger or newer person coming to making game development, they understand that things don't work always. From my perspective, it's kind of different. You know, I'm used to having ideas and everyone backs them and throws money at them. And actually, I hate it when it doesn't happen. And it's happened a lot. In the last 20 years, maybe I've spent an average of 2 years each on about 5 games that haven't come out, or haven't come out as I want them. And it just feels like a waste. A waste of the game, a waste of my time, you know. It's okay, you could say that why has anyone got any right? I've got no more right to make a new game than anyone else, which is kind of true, actually. But there's so much poor quality out there getting in the way of the quality stuff. That's really a problem. So for indies, it's hard. For the big companies, it's also hard in a different way. You know, they have to spend so much money to make the games and to market these games. It's a huge risk. If they make any slip-ups, you know, they can really, really badly affect the finances of the publisher they're working for. And so they have to play it very safe. So it's hard all round, actually. It's not, no one is clearly winning except some of the hardware companies, or the distribution platforms, should I call them. You know, your Apples and Googles of this world tend to be winning at the moment. This has happened many, many, many times. This is what I mean about wasting my time. You know, I've had maybe from my own designs, I've done lots of work on other people's games as well. But if I take my own games, either working with Chris or with a team at Sensible, or working sometimes with other people, or sometimes designing on my own, I've probably had about 12 games that people would know. Maybe, I don't know, picking a random number out of the air, maybe 15. You know, but I could have had at least 5 or 10 more. I'll give you a rundown. So in the 1987, something like this, 88, I started working on a game called Touchstone with the guys who do the Ultima series of games, Origin. It was kind of like a medieval exploring kind of game, you know. Ultima, Runestone, doesn't matter. Pick a kind of game it's like. And that was due to be signed by Origin, and in the end they didn't finish designing all of it all the way. So I spent about a year designing that game, maybe a year and a half. That eventually didn't come out. That was the first big one. And then the next big one would have been when we sold Sensible Software to Codemasters. I started working on a design for Cannon Fodder 3. We started developing it 3 times at Codemasters. 3 times it started, then the staff on the game got moved to other titles, or in one case they closed the studio down so the staff went, and the game never got finished. I spent 2 years working on that, a new Cannon Fodder in 3D. This was back in 2001. Never came out. Huge frustration for me. After that, in about 2005, I started working on a game called Virtual TV with a couple of people in a very small company called Legba. I was working as a consultant for them to help them with design and business. It was a really, really cool game. It was about you were a TV presenter for a wildlife program, and you'd gone out with a 2-man team, someone with a camera, and you're the presenter with the microphone, and you've gone to an island with dinosaurs on it, and you had to film this nature documentary about dinosaurs, about this is how they lay their eggs, this is what they're eating and stuff like this. So you had this kind of script, you had to do the little snippets of film, but you had to also not be eaten by the dinosaurs. So it was like a really fun game. And I took it around to several companies, not just in the UK, but also in Japan. And at the time, people wouldn't sign it because they said it was too original, and the accounts departments couldn't work out how much money it might make. So this is like a horrible sign that things have changed from the days when we'd sign something like WizKid and people would sign it, which is a crazy game, or even Whizball, which is a crazy game, for example, or Lo Mania, which was just turned out to be one of the first ever God games. It was just some crazy concept when we started, you know. So this change in attitude, which is maybe had come about 10, 15 years afterwards, you know, was pretty miserable. And then I worked on a game called CC, and these games, so that game, Virtual TV, we spoke to a few publishers. I think Empire was the biggest publisher we spoke to, maybe showed an interest, but in the end said no. And then we had very serious interest in a game called CCTV. So CCTV was a game where you, it was designed for a number of formats, but primarily initially for the DS. So you worked as a police inspector, and you had to find all the criminals in a city by picking people out of crowds and identifying them, and then getting information about different criminals, what they look like, where they would be, and finding information from other criminals you interrogated, and then cleaning the city up by using CCTV cameras to capture people. And then it was a really cool game. Again, very original idea. And this time you're working for the police. We got very, very close to signing that up with the guys, IDOS guys. But eventually we got to see. This is the problem. They were only going to sign 2 original games that year on top of Tomb Raider and everything else they were doing, and we got to the last 4, but we didn't get to the last 2. So that game didn't get signed up. That's another year and a half of my creative life gone on this. Of course, I'm missing in the middle the biggest one, Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, It'll Be Sensible. We signed it with Warner, and then Warner pulled out of the game because they didn't like the 18 plus content in the game, because they sold the company. I spent 5 years working on that game. 5 years to throw away, you know. And then they're probably the big ones. So you've got Touchstone, then Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll after that, then Cannon Fodder 3 after that, then Virtual TV, then CCTV. That's 5 games where I've wasted my time. And then I started to work on a game called Word Explorer, which came out last year. And that could have easily gone the same way, and I refused to let it go the same way. But the reality is that took about 3 years, and it cost me money. I lost money on that game, you know. And so this is really the problem. It's very hard to do this stuff. If I add up all those years together, I've wasted like 10, 12 years on games which never made it. Yeah, it's very frustrating. And it's just a pity that in our industry, it's not like the music industry. You can't just make an album, and it's making an album. You can kind of make the album and put it out. It won't do so well. Maybe the production's not so good, but you can do it. In our industry, it's very complex. To get anywhere is quite expensive. You know, you can't just go and do it that simply, and the technology is a big part of it. So you just have to let things die. And I'm a designer. I'm not a technical guy. So yeah, it's been really frustrating. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and wonder why. I think with Sociable Soccer, we've got a great game. I think that our challenge is to get the right backing at the right time to get it out to market. And we need clearly to get the game online to make things work. So who knows? I mean, I'm having so many discussions with so many parties all the time, different investment companies, different publishers. We just need the right partner to work with, or we go it alone. But going it alone, it's not just me risking. You know, to be clear, I've got money from the past from other games I've made. You know, not huge amounts of money, but enough to be comfortable. But all the people I'm working with aren't in that position. They can't be dragged along in this way, you know. And unfortunately, games have been pirated so much that you don't get a long tail of money coming in over time. So in a way, piracy is good because it's made us, you know, in many different countries to be known, you know, particularly like in Eastern European countries. As you know, no one bought games in those old days because you couldn't buy them. You had to get them on the black market, of course, because it didn't make us any money. It just gave us lots of fans. So it's meant that in the long term, and because the machines tend to die off, we haven't had like if you made a film or a piece of music years ago, people can still access it. You know, who can download Micropro Soccer now, or Whizball, or even Cannon Fodder in a way that would pay us money? You know, they'll get pirated version or emulator versions, but it doesn't give us the economic tail to keep on going. So as games makers, we're always very much reliant on our more recent titles than most other media, which is pretty frustrating as well. So obviously there's a plus and minus about being in an industry at the very start of it. You know, the plus part is that you're in something really exciting and it's happening, but the minus part is the business wasn't really settled down. And now the business is settled down like all businesses, in a very corporate way. I mean, we all know the reality of this stuff, right? I look forward to the time when these big corporations, that their way of doing business dies, and we can go back to a fairer, more level playing field for everybody. And I think that the really bad thing about the current indie market is it's extremely bad for new, unestablished, good people, because it's so hard to be discovered. You know, it's okay for me to complain, but I've already had loads of hit games and made money out of it, and people know who I am and stuff. So, but if I was really young and I've got my first game and it's really, really good, it's really hard out there. These are the people that are really suffering. You know, my view is like quite harsh. I would rather have 1/10 of the games on the market, but just the good ones, so then the good guys can be discovered more easily. You know, because in the old days when we were making games with Sensible Software, people loved our games. There's loads more teams like that out there, but it's harder for them to be discovered. And it's very hard for a team to establish its name as an artist, as a team, you know? Like, people know Angry Birds, for example. They don't really know Rovio, the company that made it. They don't go looking for the next Rovio game in the same way. The last team to really do that well is probably Zynga. You know, Zynga did that quite well to establish their name so that you bought other Zynga products. I'm trying to think of other companies that have done it since. Not many. Not many have done it. You know, there's companies like Supercell who have made a number of great quality games, but even then, I don't think people particularly search for Supercell games. I don't think so. So they just happen to make loads of really good games. My advice to young people is to be honest with yourself with two things. Number one, have you really got the talent to do this job? You know, do you just want to be a programmer or a game designer or an artist? Or are you genuinely good enough to do this as a career? This is a really important question. I guess the next thing would be, do you have the people around you to work with to make a game? You know, there's a small chance you can do it all on your own, but it's very small. Normally you need at least 2 or 3 people. Someone to do art, someone to do programming, someone to do design, someone to look at the production, someone to upload the stuff on the stores and manage that kind of side, and someone to do business. You know, you need these people. So have you got the team? And then the other thing is this going to be your main occupation? You know, I mean, I've been lucky to the house I'm in now. I bought with money from games. My car, my wife's car, my family, my kids are all grown up now. You know, all the money we've had has all come from games. And that's given me a comfortable life. I can't complain at all. But at a minimal level, you need enough money for a house. You know, if you've got children, to have food, to look after your family, for a car, or the things you want, just a comfortable life. We all want a comfortable life, right? Good enough life. You've got to ask yourself, can you really rely on games to give you that life? That's the question. You know, that's the major difference between now and in the past. You know, in the past, everybody that did games saw it as a job to make money, and actually a lot of thinking that it's kind of like a hobby. Like, I'm the same with music now. I mean, like, I'm a musician, I write music, I'm pretty good, but I'm not professional. People are treating games kind of in the same way. So the question is, you know, when you say you want to make games, do you want it to be your job or your hobby? It's a really big question. There's no harm in it being a hobby. It's a great hobby to have. If it's your profession, it becomes a lot more serious. All the financial issues become serious. But the problem is making games takes a lot of time. So if you're doing it as a hobby, where do you find the time on top of your work to do? So my advice is to be honest with yourself about what you want to do, and to set your targets of development and your ambitions according to the time you've got and the skills you've got and the friends you've got and the money you've got. You know, kind of combining the realities and setting yourself a realistic target, and then really going for that realistic target, and asking yourself what you want out of the process. Do you want just people to know your game, that it's out there, some kind of fame isn't the right word, but some kind of recognition? You know, do you want just to have fun? Do you want to make money? Do you want it to be your long-term career? There's so many different things you can want to get out of it. So yeah, it's knowing what you want out of it is what I'm saying. That's the key thing. You know, and making sure you're working on games that you enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it, it's a horrible process. You know, there's a lot of horrible things about making games. You've got to enjoy the game you're making.